Welcome to MT Fridays. We're Melonya Johnson, owner of BSMART Coaching, and Tahitia Timmons, owner of Conscious by Us. Together, we're here to fill your Fridays with unscripted conversations that cover the gambit: politics, current events, science, social justice, health and wellness, and more. We're here to elevate the conversation. We're fighting the brain drain, one unscripted conversation at a time. So grab your coffee, tune in, and let's dive into another episode of MT Friday.
Hello, Tisha.
Hello, 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 hello. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
I'm trying to have my energy today. So
You look
I
gorgeous.
thank
Work
you.
it.
Thank you. I woke up early because last week I was looking a little drawn, a little drained. So sometimes they say fake it till you make it. I don't really believe in that, but today the face is faking it.
Fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. That's my whole life. Fake it till you make it. So let's jump in, shall we? Where should we start? There's always so much going on in this world.
Yes, yes. So I think you had something you wanted to tell me about first,
Well,
that I
well,
didn't,
you know what? I'm
or
just, well, for those of you who might be joining us or don't know, we talk about everything, and our goal is to fill the brain drain one conversation at a time. And so we talk about politics, we talk about business, economics, technology, everything, the relationships, the whole gamut. So today, I thought it was very interesting because, quite honestly, I think we are, excuse me, we're a different country now. I think that I think we're a different country, and I think people are feeling very differently
post election
post
or
election.
post
Yeah,
election. Yeah,
post
yeah.
election. And one of the, women and women's rights have been, for whatever reason, made political, right?
Mm.
And um, American women are now looking at a movement that is coming out of Korea, called the 4B movement. And, and just to give you a little background on that, the 4B movement started in Korea in about 2010. So it's not something that's necessarily new. But I
Okay.
think it was, the women in Korea were tired of being underpaid, right? They make about 32% less than their male counterparts, in terms of earning power. They enjoy less rights. And I think that's true of women around the world, right? Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and so, they, in terms of they got tired of being saddled with traditional, not obligations, but yeah, obligations. You have the children, you take care of them, you clean the house, you do this with no support. And so they started this
So
movement.
those traditional gender roles that we see
Yes,
in a patriarchy
yes,
or heteronormative society, where
ex-
we seem to be shifting maybe back to more.
right. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
some folks, but some are looking at this movement. And this movement, there are four core tenets: one, no sex with men; two, no giving birth; three, no dating men; and four, no marriage with men. And
Hmm.
and yeah, it's quite austere. And I think South Korea now has one of the lowest birth rates on the planet. And
Wow.
so they don't know whether it's attributed to this movement or not.
Okay.
But it has been noted that after the election here in the United States, the 4B movement was Googled a lot.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Mhm.
So, sort of that response to was this election speaking more to misogyny and what would be women's response to that? So, I didn't know about the 4B movement. Thank you for sharing that with me because I wasn't aware
And
of
it's
that.
actually it's grown. It's grown from 4B to 5B to 6B.
Oh,
Uh,
so
five,
there's
yeah,
more.
I know, I think 6B is you might not necessarily, you support other women who might be struggling, right? So you find, you're, it's a sisterhood. You help those who have less. And I think, I forgot what the 5B part is, but that actually it's kind of expanding. And everybody might not want to do all of these things, but you can do some of them, right? And
Okay.
so that this is a movement that is starting to catch fire. It really wasn't until 2016 that it really started to catch fire in South Korea, because a woman was killed by a man, who his complaint was that, he always felt overlooked by women.
Hmm.
And then when he was tried, he was not found guilty of the serious charge that he was that for the crime that he committed, and that really kind of ticked things off with kick things off with the women in South Korea.
So it sounds like a big part of it is the use of sex and birth as like the tool to move women towards more equity. So I can't say I can't say 100% agree with it because
It's
it
not, but
feels
that's just
like
part of it. You just named two things, but
I
but
did, because
but
that was, like, the thing I think probably people focus on the most. Like, when
yeah,
I first
well,
heard it,
what they're
that
really
part jumped out
saying
on
is
me.
that we're not giving men our energy. We're not giving them our energy. We're not giving our focus. We're focused on ourselves. We're focused on improving ourselves. We're focused on our own goals. We're focused on, because when you stop to think about it too, we people want to move to a traditional, more, some folks want to move back to a more traditional, world. But however, it's never necessarily been safe for women, in any of these societies, really. And now we are in a society where divorce is prevalent, right? And so, you're Susie Homemaker. You're at home. You don't have a career. Your husband decides to get a new model. Right, where does that leave you? So, and just in terms of some of the protection, so these women are saying, we want our own autonomy. Um, we want to live our lives fully. We want to make money. We want to support ourselves. We want to be treated equally under the law, and we can't seem to get your attention otherwise.
Mm.
So, yeah, and I think the truth of the matter is, women do have power. They do have power. That's why we're trying to be controlled. We have power of whether or not we want to start families and not. And the low birth rate is something that's happening in a lot of countries around the world.
So, but I would almost say, like, and you did say perhaps it's not the 4B tenants or the 5B tenants that are impacting the low birth rate, but also the cost of raising children
Hmm.
has doubled, tripled, quadrupled for many people. And so I think people are also thinking about the economics of
Very
raising
much.
children. Um, in the US, there is and maybe less support economically for having children and raising children. I know in the US we have this huge push to control women's bodies when it comes to like birth and having children and promoting having children, but we're not talking about, well, what are we going to do once these children are here? Are we going to provide for them with education? Are we going to look at how much childcare costs? And it doesn't seem like we've been thinking about this as we get rid of some things in government, right? Like there's talk about getting rid of the Department of Education. And so this movement, which seeks to give women power through the power that they have, I also wonder if it is not the sole reason for the low birth rate. I think women get
No.
blamed for um, things that don't necessarily, or women are used as the excuse for things that aren't necessarily in our control. And I do feel like the financial impact of raising children for both genders are thinking about this. And I think people, there's been less of a push towards seeing our futures in children, and more of the, well, what are you going to do, and what are you going to contribute to society? And I also think, as we as individuals have been more reflective on our contributions, it's harder to do, because there is a bit of narcissism when it comes to, like, contributing to society through working, right? Like, if I wanna succeed at work, that might be, I'm devoting a lot of time to that, and if I have a child, shouldn't I be devoting some of that time to my children? And I feel like there's a little bit less support for focusing on kids
A
than ever
little.
before. Well, a lot less. Um I was trying to be positive with that. Um, I'm this topic that you brought, the 4B movement. I find it fascinating because I wonder too, what was men's reaction to that? Because I did read an article recently about, and I don't know how true this was, about a woman who divorced her husband, or maybe it was a social media post around where someone divorced their husband because, like, of how they voted. Like, obviously something was wrong in that relationship if this is true. Like, that was probably just the capper, like, because she served him papers, I guess, after this happened. But, like, there's been a lot of, like, do are do we want to cause more division between the genders and sexes, or do we want to try to, because I'm always trying to, like, think about, like, how can we work as a community, or together, and move towards, like, not alienating each other, and not, like, I I do kind of feel like that feels very us versus them. And where do non-binary people sit in that? Like, I'm just throw that in there. Like, or, like, people that are asexual. Like, it seems very, like, binary approach to how we're gonna fix this problem of women not having equality.
Well, I think that,
I'll be the critic on this
no,
one.
and that's okay. You know what? I think, first of all, I don't think one solution is a one size fits all solution for everyone, right? But I think that I think that when women fight for their own rights, right, when they fight for their rights to earn, the equivalent of men doing the same job, when they ask, and I think we have been trying to play nice in this arena. How many times do women, what's a man's job in the house, right? Take out the garbage. Right, yeah, that I find that to be a joke, right? Of course they may have some other duties as well, but the lion's share of the work still remains, in most households, still a woman's job, even though she's working 40 maybe plus hours, out in the workforce. And so I think we've begged, we've nagged, we've done, we've done a lot of things over the years. We've protested. There's been, I don't think there is any um, uh, uh, lack of knowledge in terms of what women want, right? We want to be equal. We want to have control over our bodies. If we decide to have children, we need a support system. That means from our mates, whether your mate is the same sex as or gender as you, or whether it's a different gender. Two parents are a good thing, because it's one of the hardest jobs anyone will have to ever do, right? And you want to do that job well, so to speak. And so I think these are things that women have been clamoring about for years. And then there's also been the swing, out of the 60s and 70s came, women really trying to compete as men, right? We had the big shoulders, and we could, bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan. We could do it all, right? But at the end of the day, and I just did on my podcast, American Psychology Association, a survey from 2023, I think it was, stated that women feel stress at higher levels than men, and one of the things that they say they need is support. We've been talking about this forever. And so I think drastic times sometimes calls for drastic means, right? part of the total swing against tradition is when, women became, they tried to compete with men in ways that men compete. Oh, if you can sleep around, so can we, right? And we just became, I think, a commodity that was very easy to get, right? And so I think that when you value yourself and you value your worth, then you have, I won't say different demands, but you have a different standard. And I think that a time for some time for a reflection collectively, globally, by women to say, are we really being represented and treated well on a global level and on a local level, on a national level? Do we really, because as things stand in the United States, women do not enjoy the same rights as men. Women don't have autonomy over their bodies. That means that we're not enjoying full protection under our laws and constitution. We're not seen as whole people. So what do you do? Like what do you do?
So, what about so I kind of think that some of this has to do with how we're socializing and raising children, right? So, I think the idea that boys and girls have certain toys or certain things that they can achieve, we have to try to work that out of our kind of vocabulary and thoughts. And I know that's hard because, we have generations that have been raised on the idea of certain roles for women and certain roles for men. And we start this from when kids are very young. Um, Boys don't wear dresses, right? But, like, why not? Like, it's just a piece of clothing. Like, in the summertime, a dress is very cool. Like, it's very airy. Why don't but because we've assumed that this is for girls only, right? And dresses also have deficits to them. Like, it's hard to run around and slide on the playground in a dress, right? So, but even our clothing, we start to socialize kids towards different types of clothing and colors. And but what if we didn't do that? What if we said boys and girls can do the same thing? Yes, women tend to have less muscle mass than men, but that doesn't mean that we aren't kind of telling girls very early on that you're not leaders, that you're not, construction workers, that you can't do these jobs. And what is that? What's the silent message we send boys when we call on boys more in class, or we say to girls, well, it's okay, girls aren't good at math? Because maybe as the parent you're not saying that, but maybe the grandparent is saying that, as because there's more people raising children now than before, right? So how do we change that? How, because I forget where it comes out of, but there was a report done a few years ago that boys and girls start out kind of the same academically, and then girls start to drop off with math, I think around fifth, sixth, seventh grade. Before they get to high school, they start acting different. And we do socialize this message of like coyness and sexuality in videos. And so I agree with you on that. In music, that women take sort of like in order to appeal to men, you have to be a certain way. But why do we socialize that appeal to men? What about men to appeal to women? Well, what do women want, right? Or what do we need? Or what do we both need? I think we both want to be treated like loving, caring individuals with our own thoughts versus this monolith of men being very strong and women being the carers. Because men can be carers, men can cook. Like my brother, I know I found out the other day that he does most of the cooking in the house. My sister-in-law is a nurse and she works a 12-hour shift, and it only makes sense, right? That he should step up and do the cooking and take care of the kids. And so what does it look like to really start talking about what does a balanced household look like? What does it look what what do we really want to see? There's nothing sexier on social media, I guess, than a man taking care of his child, because those are the things that go viral. Yet women do that all the time. We don't get that same, viral bump out. So it seems like it's still rare for men to be carers, but that's shifting and changing. And
Is
I
it?
do well, in the past few years, it has been shifting and changing. More men have been stepping up in households. I think the pandemic also highlighted the inequity of role division. We saw a lot of people push back during the pandemic as people stayed home and they saw, hey, even in households that didn't have like children in them, that there was a different kind of division of roles in the house. So, but what does that look like to encourage that? And in the current political system, which seems to be moving in the opposite direction, what does it look like to then own that as individuals, realizing that maybe the government isn't necessarily going to protect or encourage equity and inclusion and, diverse thoughts? Uh, so,
Well, it's very interesting when I mean, you just mentioned government that Trump's defense secretary nominee Pete Hegseth believes that women should not serve in combat roles. So it's going to be very interesting to see, where this movement has gone. And there have been women who have made the military their career, right? And
mhm.
so it's going to be very interesting. I think that I'm in full agreement that there should be a women's movement, and work towards that every day, so that we are equal citizens. But it does start in how we are socializing our children, and so part of this blame is if there's any blame to be shelled out, is also on women because we're raising these men, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. What does it look like to really start a movement to raise boys into men that respect women and not respect them in a, I need to protect you, I'm some savior of you, but in a equitable way. Like I also think women too kind of encourage this in some ways when it's like I want you to open the door, maybe I want you like, to be polite to me, and then why did you open the door for me? I can do it myself. So, we also have to stop sending kind of these conflicting messages to men. And we have to be better communicators of what we desire in relationships,
I
because
think we
every
have.
relationship
I think we
is
have. I think
is
women have
separate.
screamed, to the top of their lungs what it is that they want. It's just fallen on deaf ears.
Not in general, I mean interpersonally. I
Yeah,
think interpersonally, we tend to not communicate well across the board in
I
our
think
personal
I
relationships, men and women. We have to learn how to communicate better as a society, what we want and need.
as a society, we need to respect women. Boom, boom, mic dropped. Right, I'm not dancing around that anymore. We have sovereignty, we have rights. We should be respected as full citizens. So let's
I
change. Let's
I
change.
100% agree with
Yes,
that.
yes.
So, we don't have that much time left, but I do wanna say next week is, Thanksgiving weekend, and I don't know about you, but I'm gonna take the day off. I think we should take the day off and enjoy the Thursday before and the Friday after, and go shopping. But,
I'm going shopping.
before before we close out, I did want to bring up, because we talked a lot about women's equity and equality and those type of things. I did want to mention and we talked a little bit about this. There is a movement to remove DEI from the government. That is moving forward in the House, and
Federal
I think it's
government.
federal government. Yes, and so um, it made me think about, what would that look like for things like the EEOC? What does it look like? And I think the article that I shared with you, um, it said, something like, if this does move forward, what does it look like for those federal employees who no longer would be in those positions? And what does it look like for schools? And it seems like a big move to sort of, without any kind of replacement other than we're going to return to merit, right? So this push towards meritocracy, and if you have merit, you'll get the job. But merit didn't work before. So, and what does how are we moving towards equal hiring or equity in hiring or inclusive groups? How do you do that if you don't have some type of, you know, uh, regulations out there? I wonder about that, because if I'm an employer and I might want to shift back to easy, like, the nepotism, that I'm just going to hire all my friends. I'm just going to, you know, not look at, am I being a fair employer? And so I do think some of our employment and how people hire is very tied to government regulation. I also think the same thing when it comes to like healthcare and medicine. Without regulation, are we so altruistic and good and moral that we would just do these things because it's ethically right to do? And we know that we don't do that, right? Like, we don't do certain things unless we know that there is some standard that we're attempting to, like, not break a law, right? How many people would file their taxes just because if we didn't know, we would get in trouble? So I am a little fearful of this going forward and what the future might look like for those who just do equity in hiring and diverse and inclusive workspaces because they have to. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing. I think that I think I think this is where America is now. America is saying to those folks who have come from marginalized communities and diverse communities that we are going to be a misogynistic, racist um, country, and you don't really have a say in it. We're not going to pretend, because here's the thing. Let's get real. Um, for many, the DEI movement for companies has been something that they felt was politically correct to do.
Mm.
Because if they really had any intention of really making a change, you would see more diversity at the top of the organization, more diversity in their boards. There's sharing of power. If there's no sharing of power, then we're not. Then what we're doing is performative, right? And so, to some extent, for many, I think it has always been performative, and it's been, I think, very frustrating for those who are DEI practitioners, because especially those who are coming from marginalized communities, because they've got skin in the game, literally, right? And they really are fighting to see a change and see equity and to see equality and to see inclusion and belonging, because it's something that they know in the depths of their soul how important it is. And I've also watched them get burned out and disenchanted, and really in some cases work in futility, because the system itself has no intention of changing. So now we're getting to see America as it really is, uncovered, rose-colored glasses slapped off, right? And the truth of the matter is that the message is, we're going to be racist, we're going to say racist things, we're going to say misogynistic things. You're just going to have to suck it up, right? And we focus on DE, you're a DEI hire or whatever. It I know so many Black people who have worked so very hard, who are so very accomplished, who are very smart, and it's an insult to look at them and say, oh, they got their position because they were a DEI hire. No, we've earned it. We've earned it. And so I'm not surprised that this move is coming. It would surprise me. And as far as those jobs and those positions, they're probably gone.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find interesting about the I won't even say interesting. The other thing about this return to kind of these type of thoughts, it's a very 1980s sort of world that we seem to be returning to. When
Further
I think
back.
about what the 80s were like. Um, well, no, because I'm not going to say we're going back further than that, but the 80s were kind of like women were in the workplace, right? But you couldn't move up. You couldn't really get positions of higher, you weren't leaders, but you might be. I think of that. What was the movie with Dolly Parton? And
Nine,
that's how
9 to 5, was it?
9 to 5, right? Like, it's a return to, like, 9 to 5 where we know there's that sexist boss, and in that particular movie, they do make changes, and I love that movie because it's made so long ago, and they're requesting things that we're still asking for today, but it seems like a very much a return to that type of boss who gets away with that type of behavior, not just at companies, but a return from, like, the top federal government down, like, what does it look like to not acknowledge that you're being discriminated by your race, by the color of your skin, by your gender. What does it look like to get rid of those kind of government bodies that could help you if you were being discriminated against? Or even in the federal government, what does it look like if we're no longer looking at DEI as a way, and it's not an ideology, I can never say that word. It's a strategy, right? Like, it's a strategy to kind of hope you look at what does your workplace look like? Are you really thinking about, who's at the table? And that's what people are asking for, to be at the table. Um,
I,
and so
I think smart companies, if you're a smart company and you're a smart organization, you are not going to let these, whether there's a regulation or not, stop you, because there are just just in terms of economics, in terms of growth, in terms of market share, in terms of innovation, having a diverse workforce that is utilized, not a whole bunch of people that look different that all have to act the same, but really creating an environment where people can self-actualize and come to the Zoom call or the conference room table and really, bring their perspective, their knowledge, their insights, and their innovations to the table. Those organizations will grow, because there's always going to be somebody at that table who's going to think differently, who's going to see an opportunity where when you have groupthink, you're not going to have those kind of opportunities and innovations and thoughts brought to the table. So if you're a smart organization, you will continue to look at the makeup of your organization, to look at the makeup of your power structure, and to know that diversity really serves you, right? Even if I think even if you're not looking at it from a moral sense, just from a dollars and cents kind of sensibility, it behooves companies to have diverse workforces that they empower, not that they create an inclusive environment where people can actually self-actualize and grow. That's an integral part of the an integral piece to that. It has to really be a place of inclusion and belonging. And if you put efforts into that, I think it's going to increase your loyalty and increase, because people don't leave where they're happy.
that's true. That's true. So what are you doing to make sure that your staff is stable, that, they feel like they don't want to leave? And you're right, companies that have realized the benefits or see the benefit to this, and they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep encouraging the growth of their employees and professional development. And I think part of why people stay at organizations too is the opportunity to learn something I didn't know yesterday. And if there is groupthink, I'm not learning anything. I'm just re-socializing the ideas I already know. And businesses know groupthink is bad because it just like you said, no one's saying, "Hey, well, this might be an issue," or there could be a new market with this group that you're not even aware of has a use for this product. You stay along those same traditional lines and you keep growing slowly. When you have difference in thought, and I want to say diversity often gets thought of as like, skin color, gender, ethnicity, but there's also diverse thought. And if we think about diversity as bringing in people who have differences in opinions and thoughts and move away from this idea of it's got to look like one woman, one Black person, a Hispanic person. Where's our gay person? Now we need a white male. This isn't rainbow diversity. This is like, think about what you need and then remove the barriers that would prevent somebody from applying to that job because they don't think they're going to be hired, right? Like, remove the barriers of what people don't read anymore. I think you told you kind of were sharing that people don't really read anymore. How long
They don't
is your
know how.
job profile? Right? Yeah. How long is your job profile? People probably stop reading that. We know women don't read really, really long job profiles because they tend to think, well, they tend to disqualify themselves early on when reading those profiles. So, is your job posting, is it appealing to everybody? Who are you getting from your job posting? During your hiring process, are you being screening for your own biases so that you're having like a group of candidates that are diverse, not just diverse in how they look, but diverse in how they think? Are you open to people from the bottom to the top and the top down telling you, like, here's some things we wish would change? Is HR feared in your organization? I think that's a huge sign of whether or not you have a diverse and inclusive and equitable organization. If you go to an employee and you say, "What do you think of human resources here?" And they say, "Well, I don't tell human resources anything because I know that they," and yes, human resources does work with the goal of the company, right? Like, their first priority is the company, but they're also there for your employees. And many employees do not feel that the HR departments in their companies serve them in any way. And so it really should be more of a 50-50. I should feel comfortable going to my human resources department and saying, I'm wondering if there's a policy on this without it setting off red flags of, let me gather information and see if we're going to have a problem employee, right? Like, that is another issue in companies. That is not you being inclusive. I should have some place where I have an advocate for me too. And in most organizations, that is not the human resources department. They're seen as, as adversaries for employees in some organizations. I've even seen on LinkedIn where people will say, don't go to the human resources department because they're not your friend. Why?
But
So
you know what? Having worked over a decade in human resources, I also think that human resources gets a bad rap, and in the sense that oftentimes people who are in managerial positions and leadership positions aren't great at managing people, right? And so things escalate, they deteriorate, and then it becomes an HR issue, and then HR has to step in and what appears to be the bad guy, so to speak, and the disciplinarian. And so when people see HR coming, they think that it's problematic, it's trouble. They're not on your side, but in the places that I have worked, HR has really, and still they don't enjoy, um, uh, um, um, you know, the benefit of doubt from many employers, but they work really hard in trying to create an environment where people feel safe to come to HR, but yet and still it doesn't happen. It doesn't necessarily translate to the employees. I think that again, some companies during this time will look at it as, "Phew, good, Jesus, thank you. We no longer have to be bothered with this."
And
Um,
those companies were performative. Let's be
yes,
honest.
yeah,
They
and
weren't
they
in it. They don't
yes.
have any skin in the game. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
and so and so there's that, but I also think about the companies, who um, who are no longer with us, right? Blockbuster at one time was just this behemoth of a company. They broke the mold when it came out to movie rentals, right? But they didn't have somebody on their team that said, "Wait a minute, wonder if we don't have something physical, but how about streaming?" Right? Then,
yes,
then
yes.
came Redbox, right? And it was like, oh, wait a minute, I can keep this as long as I want. I don't have to run back. Okay, but and then Redbox probably didn't have somebody that thought outside the box, right? Because they were still dealing with physical, right? And then here comes somebody with streaming. So always need in your bench people who think differently. And rest assured, those
And
people,
young people.
not
Young
just young people. I'm
Yeah,
not. I'm.
well, I
I'm
will
not.
say that
I don't like ageism because I'm one of the outside the box kind of chicks, and I don't want to be looked at as because you're this age you don't have anything valuable or anything to say. So don't come at me with young people. I do appreciate young people, and I do think that all perspectives should be respected.
um so you're right, I shouldn't be ageist, but I will say there should be some young people who cuz I will say, like, Generation Z and younger millennials, right? So the one thing that I have heard is that sometimes in in groups, they don't get listened to because they're younger. So listen to young voices, your voices with experience. Basically, we're just saying listen to people with
Yeah.
equity and equality, right? So don't assume that because somebody is younger that they don't have the knowledge or experience to voice what they're voicing.
and, and don't
So
and don't think because somebody is older they shouldn't be hired, because that
yes,
is a very real thing that people over 40, over 50 face, right? They don't they have a lot of experience, they come to the table with a lot, right? And also some in some cases some more traditional work values, right? In terms of you know, uh, when I say traditional work values, in terms of, I don't know, different generations think about work very differently. But I'm just saying that, some folks don't get an opportunity simply because they're past a certain age, and that's discrimination.
yes,
And seeing that we're living longer, people need to work, and
yeah.
there's some value in living and in having experience, right? So creating an environment where everybody feels that they can contribute and be heard.
Yes. What we like to what we call psychological safety, right?
Right.
So where I can authentically be myself, I'm not afraid to fail. And that's important in every organization. That I'm not afraid that if I say something that seems out there, innovative, that I'm not going to get negatively thought about afterwards, because that could be a great idea, but I could be afraid to say it because, "Ooh, if I say something in this meeting, that's gonna follow me and haunt me forever." So, your employees should be able to fail and then recover. Fail fast, fail furiously. It's innovation, right? You try, you experiment, but we often don't apply that to, our workforce and say, "Hey, it's okay to experiment, to have great ideas. I want to hear them. I want to see, what can we implement? Tell me what's wrong with this. Don't be afraid to be critical, because that can prevent, things with products and services. So we're like 45 minutes almost now. And I feel like we have talked about a lot of stuff today. Yeah, so I don't know. What do you feel about closing it out at this point?
Well, you know what? I think it was a good conversation. Thank you for us for creating this space for us to talk. And I'm good. I'm wishing everybody a
Happy holidays.
safe and happy holiday Thanksgiving. And
Yes. And real quick, I'll just add this. For those who may be returning to, like, not returning, but however you celebrate the holidays, don't let the holidays stress you. If it means not hanging out with your family this holiday, because they're stressful, take that time for yourself. Go have Friendsgiving, whatever you want to do. But I think we've had a stressful couple of like weeks, and really, if the holidays are a time for de-stressing and enjoying yourself. So if family brings you joy, go visit your family. If your family is going to be a stressful thing, there's nothing wrong with saying like, hey, I'm just gonna like hang at home. um if my mom is listening, she probably is the only one listening. No, I'm kidding. I am still coming for the holiday. That's not me saying I'm not coming. But I'm just putting that out there because a lot of people are going through a lot of stuff,
yeah,
particularly with the election. There's nothing wrong with taking time for yourself. The most important thing, take time for you. Put your, what do they say in the airlines? Put your mask on first. Save yourself first. If it's going to be too stressful, don't do it. There's other things that you can do to enjoy the holiday. So
absolutely. Well, thank you, folks. And so we're going to say goodbye. Are we taking next week off?
we're taking next week off. We will see y'all in December then.
In December. All right, folks. See you on Friday. Be safe.
Yes, be safe.
Thanks for joining us on MT Fridays. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more insightful discussions every Friday. Remember, the brain drain stops here, so keep the conversation going by connecting with us on social media or visiting our website. Until next time, stay curious and keep filling your mind with knowledge. See you next week, Friday, on MT Fridays.